Welcome everybody to the EFT Business Spotlight, and we have a very special guest today, Dr. Candy Lewis-Williams. Yeah, and Candy's a naturopath with a really interesting specialty. I know a lot of naturopaths, and they don't all have a specialty like you do, and I think that you'd be the best person to tell us about that. Tell us a little bit about your practice and your passion, and really what you specialize in working with.
Well, I've been around for 37 plus years. I put the plus because it starts to sound like, but that's experience. And so I've gathered a lot of tools over that 37-year span.
Mhm.
Interesting enough, I've naturopath, I've been in the salon spa industry for the
Mhm.
total of 37 years. And over that time, of course, I started seeing the skin and hair disorders and took a look at trichology. Trichology is the study of hair loss and scalp and skin disorders. And it married very well because the way a trichologist addresses these disorders is usually from the naturopathic functional medicine, or what now I like to refer as well as to meta health. So you're looking at the person holistically, and you're looking at diet, and we're not treating, depending on our licensing, we're not treating necessarily with medication, but looking at all those what we call pathways as to why people lose their hair. That's what was my draw. And not only that, I have had my own hair loss.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and autoimmune. So some of my specialty really is trichology. With the naturopathic side, I end up getting quite a few autoimmune cases because well, let me explain. There's about 20 different types of hair losses or causes of hair loss. There's scarring and non-scarring, inflammation, non-inflammation. There's all these different, identifying that is what I help my clients do, and then deal with treatment plans. And where EFT comes in beautifully is the emotional piece that goes with it. Because, as a woman, we're taught a lot. We've heard, oh, your hair is your crown and glory. Well, what happens when your crown and glory starts to fall off? Your
Right.
crown's cocked, So that really can mess with a woman, her self-esteem, and men as well, depending on their age,
Right.
depending, and what's going on with them. Sometimes guys tend to accept it at a certain age with that certain types of common hair loss, but with women, it's very complex. And we're told as women, we're very complex creatures, and it's true when it comes to hair loss. So what I like to say with EFT is when I found EFT as a tool to add to what I call my tool belt, it was a game changer. It was like a piece of a puzzle that dropped in,
Mhm.
that those of us that are old enough to understand the word or the term pop the clutch, it kind of, if you've driven a stick shift and it won't start, you can actually get behind it. You get a bunch of buddies behind it. You put it in neutral, put your foot in on the clutch, and when they start pushing fast enough, you can toggle the. You all know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
I
about,
do.
and the car will start.
Yeah.
My practice really started always got great results with the topicals, nutrition. I have my own line of topical treatments and supplements, and I use probably 40 different. I have what do they call them? I'm trying to think. Forgive me, the name slips me, but a place where I can get supplements. I don't have to stock a whole lot of things. And anyway, so that's primarily what I have done and developed over the 37 years.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and a fascinating journey, and one that you've gone on yourself, which is always really helpful.
Yeah.
Your perspective as someone that's gone
Yeah.
through it.
Yep.
I'm wondering if you have seen certain themes, because I know with EFT and with mental health, we're looking at themes. So what are some of the themes that you
Question.
see that you help your clients with, psycho-emotional themes?
Well, what's interesting Uh, a common theme that comes into play is the trauma. Usually, I remember one of the first clients when I'm like, ooh, I'm in trouble. How can I help her? Was a lady who was dealing with what's called telogen effluvium, where the hair just kind of falls out all over.
Mm,
Um, and when I took an intake and really got to see what was going on, I usually like to look at a timeline as to when it started, when did it
Mhm.
start, and then I looked a couple of months, 6 months before that,
yeah.
when she noticed it. Well, darned if she didn't have some trauma. She was dealing with a lot of grief. She was
Mhm,
at the age where her parents were elderly. She was taking care of them. They both died. She had a
mhm,
child that was in and out of, um, I guess, prison to see it. I think he had a drug addiction or something to that effect. She just had a number of issues, and it was like that perfect storm,
right.
so to speak, where everything started coming in. And a lot of her issues really, telogen effluvium, what's usually behind that is emotional stress. And what happens with emotional stress, it depletes you nutritionally as well.
Mhm,
So there's these combination of things, and I could pump all kind of nutrients at her, but if we didn't help her at least begin to address some of these things, it's
right,
like it's like a bell captain that comes along and takes all your baggage,
right.
and helps carry them up to your room. And that's what I found EFT began to do. I couldn't do all the work for them,
Mhm,
but it's pointing them in the right direction and teaching them how to, what I call that toggle. And
mhm.
those of us that know about neuroception and the autonomic ladder and um, what is it called, Craig? Porges theory,
Polyvagal
um,
theory and understanding what you.
polyvagal theory,
Hmm.
understanding how to know where you are and really what to do. And so I call it like going back to that stick shift. If you listen to your engine when you're driving, you know when it's shifting gears. And so internally, there's a shifting that goes on, and knowing what to do when you're in that point, when your engine is straining, you have to shift a gear, you either downshift or you shift up into a higher gear. Yeah. So that's kind of my little simple way of.
I'm imagining that somebody going through hair loss are going to be
Mhm.
are going to be dealing with the current symptoms of embarrassment, the shame, the I'm
Right, the
getting old,
emotions around
right?
it.
All the emotions around it. And
Yes.
what you're speaking of, which is interesting as well, is when you start looking before the problem began, and the traumas and stressors that you work with that kind of were pre the origin of the signs and symptoms and the condition.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is there's usually already things going. And this is
Hmm.
kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Mm,
Usually and there's genetic hair loss. There's a lot of we can go into each individual, which we aren't able to do in this, but each one you address differently. But what's interesting is I usually, when the client starts in a session, it starts with a hair loss
Hmm.
and their feelings around the hair loss, but it's usually based on some foundational emotion, depleting emotion that's been going on for years.
So,
right.
Could have started in childhood.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
like the tail end. How do you find EFT to work with these clients? What's been your experience
Me,
clinically?
And how do you explain it to them?
Yeah.
Because it's very different. Like, oh, here we are, we're working on, nutrition. People get, and then the topical things and the things that you can change in your
They're
diet.
used to the
well,
They're
right.
used to that, but this
I
is
have,
where you can really
I
help.
have intake. I have intake forms. So the questions are there.
Yeah,
And a lot of my intake forms is how long have you been dealing with it? So
right.
they're already primed to understand what we'll talk about. But I have a background of hair loss for over 30 years in autoimmune conditions. And what's interesting about women in general, autoimmune is the third fastest rising disorder in women today. And uh, um, w- if nothing is done, it usually will spiral into at least three over
Mm,
their lifetime.
Mm.
So one of my goals, I work on hair loss. I like people to look great on the outside, but it's what's going on the inside. And if I can stop, and this, I say this personally as a autoimmune, some people want to say they don't, mine is what I call in remission. And I do it, I do a lot of tapping. I do a lot of HeartMath, a lot of Matrix. I mean, a lot of the emotional piece.
Right.
But I also refrain from eating certain foods that trigger
Right. So
dysregulation
is
in
it
my
easy
body.
is it easy then for you to explain it in a way where they're more accepting of it? Is it the introduction of, oh, let's look at what was happening back then when you started dealing with it, that then makes the connection?
Well, you know what? That's interesting. I haven't had so much issue with that. I think it's an organic process. I kind of explain. I have it on my website,
Mhm,
and then I explain what it's done for me.
mhm.
And then they get kind of somewhat of a trial run because we always do a discovery, which I was always trained to do. Thank you, ladies and gent, lady and gent, the discovery session
Mhm.
and the intake. And so they learn more and understand, and then the science behind it.
Right.
There's a lot of what I call, especially in the hair loss industry, that used car salesman. One remedy fits all.
Mm.
My practice is not that way, so I cater everything for that individual client. So
Yeah.
even their EFT sessions are about their challenges.
Yeah.
And then there's that feeling of safety. If you can create that privacy, that safety, knowing it doesn't go anywhere. I don't care if your mama calls, your daddy calls. It's not my
Well,
business.
confidentiality is key.
Yes.
Confidentiality, that's right.
And so, Craig,
Yeah.
is there a study on hair loss and EFT? Do you know if
Oh.
there's one?
At this point, I don't think there is. So
Well,
maybe
Candy, you should be on top of that. Let's get you in a research study with that.
All right. Let's look at that. And it depends on the study. Matter of fact, I've taught not EFT, but I've taught trichology with one of the largest institutes in the United States, and we did our in clinic training at Columbia Presbyterian,
Mhm.
and with actually one of the ladies that helped co-lead that was Angelina Cristiano. She's done some of the worldwide. She's worldwide known in her research. So we'll see. Something I may
that
be
would be
able to
fabulous.
Yeah,
That would be very
Yeah.
exciting.
yeah.
Yeah.
See what we can do with that.
Yeah. So in the
Yeah.
meantime, how can people find you? If someone wants to work with you and check you out on the web, where can they?
Yeah. My website is thelotusconcept.com, and pretty much everything about me is on there. Telephone number, reach me there.
And
Okay?
do you work with clients even if because you're in Louisiana, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm online. I work nationally and internationally.
That's what
Right.
I was going to ask.
Perfect.
Great. So you don't have to live near you to go into the office to be able to work with you.
Yeah.
No, which is great.
No, I literally have clients all over,
Yeah.
all over the world. Yeah.
Great. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for this, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.